A Inesperada Aventura Espacial de 10 meses dos astronautas da NASA. Descubra a surpreendente jornada dos astronautas da NASA que passaram quase 10 meses no espaço.
All right, so get this. Two astronauts head up to the ISS for what's supposed to be like a quick test flight.
Yeah.
About a week. And they end up staying for like nearly 10 months.
Wild, huh?
Yeah, that's a long, unplanned vacation.
So we're going to unpack this whole situation with this whole stack of news articles about NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams. They launched on Boeing's Starliner, but things did not exactly go according to plan. Their return trip ended up being on SpaceX's Crew Dragon.
Oh, wow. So they got to experience both.
Yeah. There's a lot of noise surrounding this whole thing, so we're going to dive into what really happened, how the astronauts felt about this unexpected extended stay, and what it all might mean for the future of space travel.
It's a fascinating case study, really. It highlights the complexities of human spaceflight in this new era where commercial companies are playing an increasingly prominent role.
Okay, so let's start with the Starliner mission itself. What was its initial purpose, and what were the technical difficulties that led to this whole extended stay situation? The Starliner mission was designed as a test flight for Boeing's new crew capsule. Think of it like a trial run to make sure everything's functioning properly before sending astronauts up on regular missions. The goal was to dock with the ISS, spend about a week there, and then return to Earth. But on the way to the ISS, the Starliner ran into some thruster problems.
Thruster problems. That sounds a little unsettling. Could you break down what that means and why it was a cause for concern?
Absolutely. The thrusters are essentially small rockets that help control the spacecraft's movement and orientation in space. They're crucial for maneuvers like docking with the ISS and for controlling the descent back to Earth. In the Starliner's case, there were issues with some of the thrusters firing properly, which raised concerns about the safety of the astronauts' return.
So NASA had to make a tough call. Bring the astronauts back on a potentially risky spacecraft, or find another way. What happened next?
NASA decided to prioritize safety and bring the Starliner back to Earth uncrewed. Meanwhile, Wilmore and Williams remained on the ISS with their mission extended indefinitely.
So instead of a week in space, they ended up staying for almost 10 months. That's a pretty significant change of plans. Did the astronauts have any say in this decision, or was it entirely up to NASA?
While the ultimate decision rested with NASA astronauts undergo extensive training to handle unexpected situations, including extended stays in space, their input and assessments would have been factored into the decision-making process.
That makes sense.
Yes.
But this is where things get even more interesting, because this whole extended stay sparked a wave of controversy, particularly from figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yes, this is where the story takes a turn from a straightforward technical issue to a more complex narrative involving political claims and counterclaims.
Let's unpack that. What were the specific claims being made, and how did they frame this situation?
Both Trump and Musk pushed the narrative that the Biden administration had intentionally left the astronauts stranded in space for political reasons. They suggested that the administration was somehow hindering or delaying their return, possibly to favor SpaceX over Boeing.
So we have this stranded astronauts narrative emerging. But what did the astronauts themselves have to say about these claims? They're the ones who were actually up there experiencing this firsthand.
That's a crucial point. Both Wilmore and Williams have publicly and repeatedly pushed back against the stranded narrative. They've emphasized that they were prepared for extended stays, that this is part of the inherent reality of space travel, and that they didn't feel abandoned or left behind.
So they're essentially saying, hey, we're astronauts. We're trained for this. And it's not as dramatic as some people are making it out to be.
Exactly. Their statements suggest a sense of professionalism, resilience, and a willingness to adapt to changing circumstances. They even highlighted positive aspects of their extended stay, focusing on the additional research opportunities and the unique experience of spending an extended period in space.
Okay, so we have this politically charged narrative being pushed by some, and the astronauts themselves pushing back, saying, hold on, that's not how it went down. This is where things start to feel a bit murky, wouldn't you say?
It certainly adds another layer of complexity. We have conflicting accounts, strong opinions, and potentially biased information. This is where our objective evaluation comes in. We need to sift through these layers and consider all perspectives.
Musk specifically claimed that he offered to bring the astronauts back earlier via SpaceX and that the Biden administration refused. Is there any evidence to support that?
That's where it gets even more complicated. Astronaut Butch Wilmore stated that he believes Musk to be truthful, but admitted that they lacked specific information about such an offer.
So he trusts Musk's word, but there's no concrete evidence to back up the claim.
Adding to that, former NASA officials have denied receiving any formal offer for an early return from Musk.
So it's a he said, she said situation with no clear documentation to support either side. That definitely adds to the murky factor we were talking about.
It does indeed. And to further complicate matters, we have astronaut Sunita Williams disagreeing with Musk on another point entirely: the future of the ISS.
This just keeps getting more layered. What's the disagreement about the ISS all about?
Musk has suggested retiring the ISS early, citing its age and the need to focus on more ambitious goals like reaching Mars. Williams, on the other hand, has publicly argued that the station remains incredibly valuable and scientifically relevant, advocating for its continued operation.
So even within this one situation, we have conflicting opinions and perspectives from people who are all deeply involved in the world of space travel.
It's important to remember that behind all these headlines and political debates, there are real human beings grappling with the consequences of these decisions.
Right. These are real people, not just pawns in some political game. What have the astronauts said about the personal impact of this experience?
Suni Williams spoke candidly about how difficult the extended stay has been for her family and friends back home. The prolonged separation and uncertainty took a toll.
That's a powerful reminder that there's a human cost to these decisions. It puts things into perspective.
Indeed. And it raises an interesting question. How would you feel about an unexpected months-long extension in space away from loved ones?
That's something to think about as we continue to delve into this story.
Yeah, it really does make you think about the human side of all of this. We've got this huge stack of news articles, and it seems like the way this whole situation is being reported really varies depending on who's doing the reporting.
That's a really sharp observation. The media plays a significant role in shaping public perception, and the way they frame a story can definitely influence how we understand it.
So how do we cut through all that and get to the heart of what really happened? It feels like we're getting all these different glimpses of the story, and some of them don't quite line up.
It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with some pieces missing. We have sources like this CBS News article, which focuses on the astronauts' own statements, emphasizing their resilience and kind of downplaying the whole political angle.
Right. And then we have articles like this one from NDTV, which highlights Musk's social media posts, where he makes these claims about offering an earlier return and the Biden administration refusing. It's hard to reconcile those two versions of the story. Exactly. It's so important to remember that each source has its own perspective, its own biases, and its own way of framing the narrative. That's why it's so crucial to consider multiple sources, to look for corroborating evidence, and to be critical of the information we're consuming.
It almost makes you wonder what Musk's motivations were for making those claims publicly.
That's a very valid question. Some analysts have suggested that it was a strategic move to promote SpaceX, while others believe it was a genuine attempt to help the astronauts. Without further information, it's difficult to know for sure.
So what should we make of all this conflicting information? It feels like we're wading through a sea of opinions and interpretations.
Well, remember, our aim here is to objectively evaluate the news. We're not trying to, definitively settle the whole stranded astronauts debate, but rather to present all sides of the story and encourage, critical thinking. What do you think, as the listener, are some key takeaways from all of this?
Well, it's clear that this situation was more than just a technical glitch. It exposed the growing role of private companies in space exploration and how that intersects with politics.
Yeah, and it also highlighted the importance of clear communication and transparency, particularly when dealing with such high-stakes situations that involve, human life.
Absolutely. And it raises questions about how we'll navigate similar situations in the future as commercial spaceflight becomes more commonplace.
Speaking of which, we haven't even touched on Sunita Williams' perspective on the future of the ISS.
Oh, right. That's a whole other layer to this story.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed to have a very different view from Elon Musk about the station's future.
Yeah, while Musk advocates for focusing on Mars and potentially retiring the ISS, Williams believes the station is still in its prime and has a lot to offer scientifically.
It's interesting to see that even within the space community, there are all these differing opinions about the best path forward. What factors might be influencing their viewpoints?
Well, Musk, as the CEO of SpaceX, is naturally focused on pushing the boundaries of space exploration. His vision is very ambitious and forward-looking. Williams, on the other hand, has spent a considerable amount of time on the ISS conducting research and experiencing its capabilities firsthand. So her perspective is grounded in the practical realities of, working and living in space.
It makes sense that their experiences would shape their views.
Yeah.
It seems like we're entering this era where these kinds of situations, involving both technical and political considerations. These are going to become a lot more common.
It's almost inevitable. As space exploration becomes more commercialized and international, we're going to see so many more players involved. Private companies, government agencies, different nations.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how we'll handle situations like this in the future,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to, making sure the astronauts stay safe.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Who will be responsible for making those tough calls when there are conflicting priorities and agendas at play?
Right. And what about the astronauts themselves? Will they have more of a voice in these decisions, or will they just become increasingly caught between all these competing interests?
Yeah, it raises some very important ethical considerations.
Yeah.
How do we balance the drive for progress and innovation with the need to protect human life, especially in such a high-risk environment?
It's almost like a preview of the challenges we're going to face as we venture further into space.
Absolutely. It's a huge reminder that space exploration isn't just about rockets and technology. It's about human beings pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Right.
And that comes with a whole set of complexities.
So where do we go from here? What can we learn from this whole Starliner situation as we move forward?
I think one key takeaway is the importance of establishing really clear protocols and guidelines for handling these kinds of situations, especially when there are multiple entities involved.
Yeah, and perhaps even more importantly, the need to prioritize open communication and transparency.
Exactly. We need to ensure that everyone involved, from the astronauts to the decision makers, has access to the information they need to make informed choices.
It's like a call for greater collaboration and a shared understanding of the risks and responsibilities involved in human spaceflight.
Absolutely. The future of space exploration really depends on our ability to work together, to learn from our experiences, and to always put the safety and well-being of our astronauts at the forefront.
Well, this deep dive may not have provided all the answers, but it
Yeah.
has certainly given us a lot to think about. It's a reminder that space exploration isn't just about the science and technology, but it's also about the human stories, the challenges and the ethical considerations that come with venturing beyond our planet.
So as you continue to follow the developments in space exploration, keep asking those questions, keep seeking out diverse perspectives, and keep engaging in these important conversations. The future of space is a shared journey, and it's up to all of us to shape it responsibly.